All right, welcome once again to the Sustainable Equity Financial Literacy video series. Mary's going to give a wonderful presentation on credit today. This is the second installment of the series. The third one will be next Thursday, the 20th at 12 p.m. And that one's going to be on saving strategies for non-savers. Take it away, Mary.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you again for being here. And we're going to spend some time today learning about credit reports and credit scores. Again, I'm Mary Crawley, and I have done this presentation in coordination with Virginia Cooperative Extension Financial Education and the Military Family Learning Network. Again, a little bit about me for our online viewers. My educational background is in education and psychology. I have a master's in finance. I've worked professionally as an educator, as an academic advisor, and currently as a financial counselor. I'm currently working with in an emergency assistance program in coordination with military service members who require emergency financial assistance. And I'm currently working on becoming an accredited financial counselor. Today we're going to look at credit scores and credit reports. We're going to learn the difference between the two, speak a little more detail about what is in a credit report, talk about what makes up your credit score, if you have low credit or need to work on your credit score, how to rebuild that credit, and then if credit counseling is something that you might want to explore. So, defining credit. First, that credit report. What is the difference between the report and the score? The credit report is a written report of how a person deals with credit. So it is several pages in length with some different information about you, but it is an overall written report. Your credit score is a number that kind of shows your credit worthiness, and that is based on your credit report. And finally, those two pieces of information come from your financial history that is reported to the three credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And those are the three organizations that collect all of this information and gather it so that you have a credit report. Looking more closely at credit reports. First of all, what's in them? We've got four things: identifying information. That's your name, if your maiden name if you're married, or any other name you may have gone by. Might give your address history. I actually pulled one of my credit reports last month to look at it, and it had actually the last, since I'm a military person, we move around a lot, but about 12 addresses that I've lived at in the past 17 years. So good report of your address history, your social security number, your date of birth, your spouse's name, might have employment history, all part of that identifying information. It also has account information. This is your where you have utilized debt. So revolving credit accounts, if you have credit cards, any mortgage, car loans, school loans, anywhere where you've needed to utilize credit, a report of that, what the account is, what the balance is, and whether that account has been paid and up to date, or if it's been late. Also has public record information. That is if you've had anything that may have gone through the court system, if you've had to file for bankruptcy, if you have a tax lien, if you owe child support, any monetary judgments that may have gone through the court system. That's all in the public record information. And then inquiries. These are organizations that have asked to learn about your credit. It might be generated because you have applied for credit. So if you apply for a mortgage, there will be an inquiry from the company that you've applied from to find out about your credit worthiness. Or it might be an inquiry that was not generated by you. Maybe a credit card wants to send you an application so that you can become one of their customers. So they may ask to and look at your credit. What's not included in a credit report: your race, income, medical history, and your political preference. Sample credit report. I've got one up here, but I know that that's really hard to see, so I have some other samples that we can just kind of skim through. and look at to see, so that we can see these pieces again, and maybe I'll talk from this one that we can see a little better. This one happens to be a sample from Experian. Just pick that one. Equifax and TransUnions are very similar. I like this sample though because when you go home and run your own credit report to check it, it has some notes at the side of this handout so that you can see, so that it tells you what each section is and what you can look for. At this top section, just like we talked about on that previous slide, it has the identifying information, in this case John Q. Customer. It doesn't have his address, but yours will probably have your address on there. If you look at the top on this, it has a report number and a report date. That is a specific number that corresponds with the credit report that you will run, and that number is important if you find any information while reviewing your credit report that you might need to update or that is incorrect and you want to fix, because you'll need to refer to that credit number or to that report number when you file your correction, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So at that top part is your identifying information. The next piece, and potentially negative items. So in this case, we have a civil claim that was paid on this example. In our example here, we've got an account that's overdue. So that might be something that's a negative item on the account. Down below, we've got the credit items. So these are the accounts that your credit accounts are. Excuse me. So in this example, we've got ABCD banks, and it looks like it's some sort of a revolving credit account, and it tells your status. So in that case, it said it was past due by 60 days. And when you run your credit report, it may be 4 or 5 pages long, so it might look kind of intimidating, but just if you can use this guide as you go along and just go through it bit by bit, you'll see that it might take a bit to go through, but it's well worth perusing and checking to make sure that all the information is correct. Shows your accounts in good standing. I'm in the middle of the second page here. So this person has an automobile loan around line 5, auto finance, that account's in good standing. It continues on with different credit reports. And then finally, on the third page, it says requests for your credit history. So those are the inquiries. So on that third page, home sale realty company, maybe this John Q. customer is shopping around for a home mortgage. So this company has made an inquiry about his credit worthiness. And also M&T Bank and Western Funding. So this person might be shopping around for some different loans or financing or opening some new accounts. So this just gives example of what your typical credit report might look like and some different information on it. Just again, looking up at our sample one that I have here, and this is how some of them will view. They might give you a visual block of when your accounts are paid, but then here with the red, obviously that's some time period where the John Q. customer had some overdue or late payments on the account, because it will show how over a past period of time, if your account was kept in good standing for a number of years. Okay, so going on, we've looked at our credit report. What's on our credit report? Who can see your credit report? Creditors and potential creditors, so people with whom you have an account. Sometimes your employers can see your credit report. Some government agencies, insurance companies might take a look at your credit report. Collection or judgment agencies and creditors, your landlord and mortgage lenders will look at your credit report, so will utility companies and student loan companies. Now, why do these people want to look at your credit report? What is, let's say your student loan, what does that have to do with your credit report? Or your insurance company? What are they looking for? Or especially your employer. Why does an employer want to look at your credit report? What might it show? there's a correlation, a relationship between, the insurance companies have found too, if you're responsible with money and utilizing credit, you're more likely to be responsible at work and in paying off those debts. So if they're taking if there's an employer and they're narrowing it down to 2 candidates to get a job, and one person has really great credit and has shown a lot of financial responsibility, and the other candidate has a really low credit score and a lot of late payments, that employer is probably going to lean toward the person who's used credit responsibly, used money responsibly, because they'll probably utilize that company money responsibly too. So there are lots of reasons that you want to try to make sure that you have good credit and pay your accounts on time. Okay, now, so we learned what a credit report is, who's going to look at it, how can you look at it? That's important too. You can check your credit report for free from one of the 3 credit reporting bureaus that we've talked about, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You can get one report from each of those companies for free once a year. You can do it online at annualcreditreport.com. You can call that phone number, 1-877-322-8228, and they can arrange with someone to get a report, or you can mail a request to get a credit report. So since you can choose to get all 3 reports at once and check it once a year, or if you want to keep a little closer eye on your credit, you can check one every 4 months and check your credit 3 times a year. So what I've done is I put in my calendar every 4 months a reminder that comes up on in my Google Calendar to check my credit report by the next credit agency. So last month I checked mine from Experian. In 3 months, maybe I'll check it from, I think I have Equifax scheduled to check that one, and then 4 months after that I'll check it with TransUnion, and then I'll start over again. So I can look at that information 3 times a year. Now, the credit reporting agencies, your credit report from one to the other might not be exactly the same, because it's up to that company to report that information to the credit bureau. So there might be information that varies a little bit from report to report, but if you find any information on one that's incorrect, then and you submit it to that one, they have to notify the other 2 that there's incorrect information, that it should be changed. Although it would always be good to follow up and make sure the information gets changed. There are a few other occasions when you can get a credit report for free, other than your one-time-a-year freebie. If you're denied credit, insurance, employment, or a government benefit or license for some reason based on your credit report, that agency has to give you a copy of your credit report, or you're eligible to get a copy based on that denial. If you're unemployed and plan to apply for a job within 2 months, you can get a free credit report. If you're receiving public assistance, or if you suspect errors because of fraud, or if you're a victim of identity theft or fraud, you have the right to receive a free credit report so you can try to fix your report. Or if in line of getting employment or something, so that you can get it in as good shape as possible before you apply for a job. Now, another reason it's very important to check your credit report. Unfortunately, a lot of times there are errors on credit reports. There have been some audits and studies done that 25 to 30%, that's a pretty big number of credit reports have some type of error that's serious enough that it might affect either you being approved for credit or being approved at a rate that would be as good as what you should receive. So it's very important to check your credit report, review it carefully, make a list of anything that's inaccurate or wrong about it, fill in and submit this request for reinvestigation that will come with your report, and by law, that credit bureau has to do an investigation and fix that error if they find that there is one. And you want to keep written records of any correspondence that you have between you and the credit report company, between any documents that you find that support your claim that something is incorrect. And obviously anything that you submit to the credit report company should be a copy. You want to keep your own copies of your individual or your main record. and just send a copy. Okay, so that's talking about credit report, the written report that's a statement of your credit. Now we're going to look at that credit score, that number. So first, we're going to look at what goes into making up that number. Made up of 5 pieces. The very first and most important, 35%, is your payment history. Do you make your payments on time? That's the most important piece of what goes into that score. The second piece is credit utilization. That's 30%, so almost a third. And what that means is that let's say that you have 3 credit cards, and each one has a $1,000 limit. It's an asking how much of that limit are you using. If you have all 3 credit cards completely maxed out and you have almost $1,000 charged on each one, that's going to hurt your credit utilization record. The recommended amount is to keep your credit, each open credit report, revolving credit like your credit cards, don't spend more than 1/3 of that credit limit. Otherwise it can affect your credit utilization score. So you don't want to charge more than about $300 on those credit cards that have that $1,000 limit, because it hurts your score when you get up close to that limit. Our next piece, the length of credit history, that's how long you've been utilizing credit or how long you have those accounts open. For me, just by nature that I'm 15 years older than Sean, if all things being the same, my credit score is probably going to be higher just because I've had more time to utilize credit, and I've had some credit accounts that have been open for 20, 25 years. The next one is new credit. How many new accounts are you opening? If you're opening several new accounts at one time, that is a little risky, so you don't want to open too many at one time. That hurts your score. And then different types of credit. How are you using different types of credit? Do you have a mortgage and a car loan, and maybe you paid off a student loan, and maybe you have some credit card accounts that you have paid off? So you're using different types of credit and using it well, hopefully. So we talked about when we can get our credit report free. There's some times that you can get your credit score for free. When you apply for a mortgage, that lender has to give you your score. If for some reason a creditor charges you a higher rate, you have a right to know your score that decision was based on. Or if a creditor takes action against you, you have the right to know what that score was. Sometimes it's required by state law in situations that you are informed of what your credit score is. And recently, some companies have been adding it as a business perk to provide you with your credit score. The bank that we use gives us our credit score. We're able to access that for free. And like I know Discover Card, they when you get your credit statement at the end of the month, it has your credit score on it. So that's another way to get that score. Talking about credit scores, there's that number, and who's heard of FICO? All heard of our FICO scores, maybe? FICO score? That a lot of people associate FICO with being a credit score. Kind of, if you look at, if you say, oh, I need a Kleenex, that's kind of synonymous with a tissue. A brand name that's synonymous, but FICO is actually just a brand. It's one type of a credit score. There are lots of different companies that provide credit scores. FICO is just the most popular, so that's, if you've heard that term with credit score, that's just one type. I think about 90% of credit decisions are made using FICO scores, so it is the most popular, but it's not the only game out there. There's another one that's called a Vantage score. For the means of this presentation today, and since FICO is most popular, that's what we're going to go into more detail and look at today. For your FICO score, it's a number between 300 and 850 that reflects your credit worthiness. The higher the score, the more credit worthy you are seen based on your credit report. If you just want to know what your score is, you have to pay a fee to get it. Now, today, if you really want to know what your score is, when after the presentation you go home and you're pulling that credit report to check it, as we've talked about is a good idea, From annualcreditreport.com, you can make an option to request your credit report when you're checking, like through Experian or whichever company you choose. It does cost about $20 to get that credit report, and be very careful when you're going through the checkout and read carefully what you're doing, because even on annual credit report, they'll be happy to sign you up for a monitoring plan. So if you don't want a monitoring plan or ongoing expenses to find out what your score is or what your credit report is, make sure that you're just getting the one-time only credit score. It should cost about $20. And let's see, so another way is to get it is mortgage and auto lenders have to show you your score when they're evaluating your credit, so they would show you that FICO score. And on this website, and there are other calculators as well, this is just one example, this will ask you, if you go to this bankrate.com /brm/fico.calc.asp, it'll give you a rough idea of your FICO score. It'll ask you some questions, you input the information, and it'll give you an estimate of what it would expect your FICO score to be. And if you just use a search engine and say, estimate my FICO score, there lots of options will pop up that will calculate this for you. So now what does that score mean between the 300 and the 850? If you're in the 750 to 850 range, that shows you have excellent credit. You're going to get the best interest rates for anything that you apply for. Your mailbox is probably full every day of credit card applications because they want your business, because you're going to be a great customer for them. 700 to 749 range is good credit. You're going to get very good offers, maybe not the absolute best, but good. Shouldn't be any reason to deny you credit for anything. 650 to 699 is fair. You won't be getting the best rate and might not be approved for all credit decisions. And then finally, the red zone, the 300 to 649, your credit's poor. May have some defaults, might have some judgments, may have some accounts that are past due, may have a bankruptcy. So, so a lot of things that are going on in your financial life that need some work. And why is this important? It's because it affects your pocket. Poor credit costs you. I know this chart is a bit difficult to read, but just looking at this, I want to show two parts of this. With that very best score range, let's say you have a loan, your APR on the loan for somebody with that premium excellent credit score, the rate is going to be 3.3%. The total interest paid on this loan over the life is $1,700. As opposed to somebody who's at the bottom here with the FICO score, their interest rate is going to be 13.8%. And over the life of this loan, they're going to pay $7,800 in interest. So that is a huge difference if you're getting a car loan and you're having to make those payments, whether you're paying that extra $6,000 of interest over the life of the loan. That's a huge difference. And probably somebody who has that poor credit report could really use that extra $6,000 for something. And this was same thing, if your score improves, this shows like a savings could save you $3,600 on a loan of that size. If your score changes in a negative way, it could cost you an extra $2,500. So this is where that credit score matters, because it's the cost of borrowing is going to cost you more the worse your credit is. Now, well, what happens if you're late, or if you have to settle debt, or worse, have a foreclosure or bankruptcy? It's going, and you may have heard people say, "Oh, it's going to kill my credit score. It's going to mess up my credit," and it might for a period of time. These are some examples of how your score will drop if you make these poor credit decisions. Anywhere from, let's say you max out that credit card. We talked about the credit utilization. If you charge that credit card up to $1,000 and try to make that extra payment and it might go over, your credit score might take a ding of anywhere from 10 to 45 points. I find it kind of interesting. The higher, if you look between the two charts, the higher your score is, the more they ding you if you make these credit mistakes. So your score is going to fall a little more if your credit's really pristine. But all the way down to bankruptcy, if you have a bankruptcy, it could lower your score between 130 and 240 points. That's huge. So we've talked about credit reports, talked about credit scores. Now, how do we fix our credit if it's not pristine, if we don't have the 850 FICO score? And we're going to look at it in that each of those categories that adds up for your FICO score. That first part, the 35% for the payment history, number one thing, pay those bills on time. That's the absolute biggest thing that you can do to affect your credit score and keep it high or improve it. Pay those bills on time. If you're having trouble paying the bills on time, try to call that creditor and make some sort of arrangement with them so it won't show up on your credit report, or see if they'll accept partial payments and not report it. But do your best to pay those bills on time, or get them paid, get them current if they're not current. Next piece, the credit utilization. That's how much of the debt that you're using compared to how much you're able to use. We talked about keeping those balances low on credit report on your credit cards. Pay off the debt rather than moving it around. If you've got the one credit card charged up to $1,000, doing a balance transfer to the other credit card for just transferring that balance isn't going to help your credit score. You need to pay it off rather than move it around. And don't close unused credit cards as a short-term way to raise your scores. It's actually interesting, and I think we talked about this on one of the other ones as well, but it can actually hurt your credit score if you close a whole bunch of accounts that you're not using. I think that's, as a counselor, I think that's kind of unfortunate because you don't want to have the temptation, or you don't want to have a bunch of accounts open. I think that's kind of a security issue, but just right now that's the way the system is set up. So let's say you have those 3 credit cards we talked about. Each one has a $1,000 limit, and let's say 2 of them you don't even use, and that third one you're charging, up to that $300 mark. Well, if you're charging $300 and you have the capacity from all the credit cards to take up, to charge $3,000, $1,000 plus $1,000 plus $1,000, 300 over 3,000, that's 10%. You're only utilizing 10% of your available credit. That's great, right? But let's say you say, oh, these other 2 cards I'm not using, I'm just going to close them. Well, now you have $300 charged of $1,000. Suddenly your credit utilization ratio has jumped to 30%. And you didn't do anything. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything bad. You're just trying to not have a couple credit cards out there floating around. But that actually does hurt your credit utilization. What I've done, if there are cards that I really just don't want to deal with anymore, is I don't close them all at once. I might close one and then close another after some time, or after a year or 2 passes, and then to get rid of those ones that aren't being utilized. But don't close them all at once, especially not if you're about to make a purchase, because then that'll reflect negatively on your score. The next thing, the length of the credit history. Don't open a lot of new accounts just to have more length of credit. If you open a lot of accounts at once, it actually decreases your average amount of time that you've had accounts open. So that's not something that you want to do. Plus, if you open a bunch at once, it looks a bit risky to the evaluators. And then new credit. People worry when people have heard of that term, making if you inquire or if they ask for an inquiry on your credit, that it affects your credit score. So, but obviously we all want to get the best rate if we're making a purchase, if we're buying an automobile, or if we're looking for a home mortgage. As long as you do your shopping within a short amount of time to ask, to call around and make those inquiries. So if I'm looking to get a mortgage, and if I call Wells Fargo and have them pull my credit report so that I can get what rate they would charge me, and then I call Bank of America, and then I call USAA. As long as I do all of that within a 2-week period, you know, the evaluators can look at my report and say, oh, she's shopping for a mortgage, she's calling around to find the best rate, which is a smart thing to do, right? We always want to get the best deal. You know, they're not going to think that I'm trying to buy 3 houses. They've seen this, they know what that is, but you want to keep it within a short time frame. As long as you do all of those, all of that inquiry within a 2-week period, it's just going to, you know, show that one time you're requesting credit. And let's see, types of credit. Again, it helps if you have utilized different types of credit: the mortgage, the car loan, the student loan, the revolving credit with credit cards. Manage that responsibly. Only open these new accounts as they're needed. Just don't say, oh, I need to show I can, you know, manage credit on a wide variety of topics. Just get what you need, and with time you'll show that you have needs in various areas. So that's our, so we've talked about what credit reports and scores are, how to improve our credit score, and now if we have that bad credit, how do we rebuild it? If you've got one of those really low scores, or if you've gone through a bankruptcy or a foreclosure and taken a big hit, what can you do to slowly start reestablishing your credit? Open a deposit account at the bank and make sure that you're keeping a positive account balance. Use those credit cards carefully. If you can get a credit card, you might even need to get a secured credit card so that they will take that risk on you that's affiliated with your bank account. Build credit in your own name. A lot of, some people will, when they go through a divorce, all of their credit history is tied up with their spouse, so especially if there's been a spouse that didn't work, they may not have a lot of their own credit history, so it's important to have that credit history in your own name as well. And sometimes if you work with a credit union or a bank to get a small personal loan and show that you can manage to pay that back responsibly, that helps build back your credit. And finally, avoid the quick fix of a credit repair company or a debt management company. There are some good organizations out there, but like with all things in finance and all kinds of areas, there are always companies that are out there just looking to make a quick buck on you. So we'll talk a little bit about what to look for if you feel that you need help rebuilding your credit. However, really, there's nothing that you can't do on your own with a little knowledge and a little discipline. You don't need one of these companies to help you fix it. There is a difference though between the credit repair and debt management and credit counseling companies. The upper two, check them out carefully, but a lot of those are just out to make a buck. Consumer credit counseling services, though, can be very useful if you're trying to rebuild and manage that credit. When you're evaluating those companies to see if that's somebody that you want to work for, use a company affiliated with the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. That just helps ensure that they're doing this for the right reason. Check the Better Business Bureau. Use a search engine and check them out online. Believe me, if they've done bad things, somebody's going to have written a post about it online. And just evaluate and see, from what you're reading on. Do they have comments? Do they have a lot of negative comments? Clearly, that's somebody you want to run away from. Check and see if they have nonprofit status. That again shows that they're doing this counseling with the right heart. Try to find a local agency rather than somebody doing it on the phone, because you never know who you're calling if it's a phone number. And look for an agency with a wide range of services. Do they have education as well as sitting down with you and working one-on-one to look at your situation? If you're going to work with an organization, ask about all the different costs and fees and get whatever contract that you make with them in writing. Make sure you have all the documents and that you read them before you sign any contract with these organizations. Ask how their employees are compensated. If they get a salary, that's very different from somebody working on commission who might just want to get you signed up for a debt management program. Ask about how it will affect your credit. If it is an organization that might make debt payments on your behalf, ask how they handle your payment and how they disperse your payment out. And as a final note, there are lots of companies that we hear on TV and radio that will fix your credit. The only way to really fix your credit is for you to correct errors that might immediately fix your credit, is to fix any mistakes that might be listed in your credit report, which is something that you can do yourself. There really isn't a company that can immediately guarantee to give you a strategy and raise your credit score by 50 points. That's definitely a reason to run the other direction. And then just improving your credit takes time and patience and disciplined behavior. So just be in it to fix it for the long haul. And remember, good credit depends on you. So get that report, free report, 3 times a year, once a year from each company. Review it, look through it carefully, make sure the information on it's correct. And if it's not, correct it. Ask for that incorrect information to be reviewed. You can also tell your side of the story if they've gone to a company and the company insists, no, what we have in there is correct. You can write a personal statement and include that on your credit report, so that if somebody's reviewing your report to make a credit decision or an employment decision, or deciding whether to insure you or not, they can read that personal statement and get your side of the story as well. And then, even though the credit bureau is supposed to notify, the one credit bureau you're working with is supposed to notify the other 2, certainly follow up and make sure that it happened, and that any information that is on there that's wrong is corrected with all 3 credit bureaus. Now, there we go. Just for fun, we say make sure we all learn something today. We'll take a little quiz, but we'll do it together. We'll work together to do this, and I'll read it, and then we'll kind of chime in and see what we think the answer is. And plus the writing is really small, so sorry about that. Okay, so our credit score quiz. The first question: which of the following might use credit scores? A mortgage lender, B, a credit card issuer, C, a home insurer, D, a cell phone company, E, an electric company, F, a landlord, or G, all of the above? Chime in. G, all of the above. Absolutely. Good answer. Next, on a $20,000 60-month auto loan, about how much more would a borrower with a low credit score pay than a borrower with a good score? So our first answer, under $1,000, B, between $1,000 and $3,000 more, C, $3,000 to $5,000 more, or D, more than $5,000.
Probably D.
It is D, more than $5,000. So if that's a 5-year auto loan, think about what you could do with that extra $1,000 you don't have to pay for your auto loan. That's a huge difference and a big reason to try to make sure that you have a good credit score. 3, which of the following does a good credit score typically measure? A, knowledge of consumer credit, B, attitude toward consumer credit, C, amount of consumer debt, D, risk of not repaying a loan, and E, financial resources to pay back loans. And it might be more than one answer.
C and D.
So C and D, the amount of your debt, that's on that score measures that. Your risk of not paying a loan, that would be calculated in the score. And would it know your financial resources? Do they have access to your bank information and your employer, what the amounts are in there?
I don't think so.
No, they don't. So correct. C and D. So which of the following factors are among those used to calculate a credit score? So A, a person's age, B, missed payments, C, high balances on credit cards, D, your marital status, E, your state of residency, or F, personal bankruptcy?
B.
B, missed payments. C, yes, high balances on credit cards, and
F.
Yeah.
F, personal bankruptcy. That's correct. Good. We're not your marital status, not your state, not your age. Number 5, which group of Americans is most likely to have a credit score? A, those who have borrowed money. B, those with a bank account. C, those who've paid for any financial or utility service. Or D, all Americans at least 21 years old. Who's most likely? And this is one answer. I thought this was a bit tricky.
Is it A?
It is A, those who have borrowed money. Because that shows they're utilizing or how they're managing their debt, the credit score. Okay, 6. Who collects the information on which credit scores are most frequently based? A, FICO and Vantage Score. B, the 3 main credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. C, individual lenders. Or D, the federal government.
A and B.
Just one of those. Who collects the information? That one's kind of a trick question. B, that's right. The credit bureaus are the ones that collect that information. Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. FICO and Vantage Score are the companies that calculate the score based on the information from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. 8. Does each consumer have just one generic credit score? Is your number always that number, whatever your credit score is? That's the score.
No.
No. So that remember we talked about FICO. That's the most popular score, but that's not the only score. So your FICO score might be different from your Vantage score, which might be different from ones that other companies use that aren't as popular. So you might have more than one credit score depending on which company is doing it. And then lenders might use different scores depending on what they're evaluating. So if you're shopping for a mortgage, they might rely on a score that's more geared heavily toward how have you done with paying off mortgages or paying your rent in the past. So they utilize different scores depending on what kind of credit you're seeking. Let's see. 9, what is a good generic credit score? Is it 600, 700, 800, 900, or E, it depends on the scoring system? $800. This might be a trick one too. It depends on the scoring system. Because FICO is the one that's 300 to 850. Vantage actually just recently changed, but their range used to go up over 1,000. So while 800 would be a really great FICO score, 800 might not be a really great Vantage score with their previous scoring system. So you have to just know what the range is for the system that you're using. 10, are all generic credit scores free? Always, sometimes, or never? Sometimes, that's correct. Sometimes you can get it for free depending on your needs, but not always, so sometimes. 11, when are lenders who use generic credit scores required to inform borrowers of the credit score used in the lending decision? A, after they apply for a mortgage. B, on a credit card, auto, or other consumer loan when a consumer doesn't receive the best terms or lowest rate. C, when a consumer is turned down for a loan. D, all of the above, none of the above, or we don't know. All of the above. If any of those apply, they need to inform you of your credit score and why that decision was based. 12, which of the following actions help a consumer raise a low score or maintain a high one? A, make all loan payments on time. B, use a credit card keeping the balance under 25% of the credit limit. C, avoid opening several credit card accounts at one time. Or D, all of the above.
That'd be D.
D, all of the above. That's right. All of those things will help you raise a low score, maintain a high one. Pay on time, keep your credit utilization low, and don't open several cards at one time. Next, when will multiple inquiries about getting a mortgage or auto loan or loans from lenders lower one's FICO or Vantage score? We talked about that, multiple inquiries, like if you're shopping for a mortgage. A, each time you make an inquiry. B, only when one makes at least 5 inquiries, if you check 5 different companies. C, never during a 1 to 2 week window. Or D, never.
B.
No, it doesn't necessarily have to do with the number of inquiries.
Is this C?
C, that's where you have that 1 to 2 week window to shop for that mortgage or that auto loan, and it won't take a hit on your credit report. So just make all those inquiries within that short period of time, but definitely don't be afraid to shop around and get that best rate when you're making a decision where you're getting debt. 14, how important is it to check the accuracy of your credit report at the 3 main credit bureaus? A, very important, B, somewhat important, or C, not very important?
Very important.
Very important, good, and I hope that everyone from that information is inspired to go home and check that credit report very soon to make sure that the information on there is correct. 15, how often are credit repair companies helpful in correcting any credit report errors and taking other measures to improve your credit score? Always, occasionally, usually, or never?
Never.
Well, I hope it's not never, but
Occasionally.
But yeah, I would say, credit repair companies. I'd say occasionally, because some of them are in it for the right reasons, but a lot of the credit repair companies, you have to be very careful, because a lot of them are in it just to make their profit, and they're not really going to help you get in better shape. They're going to make sure that they get paid. So they're occasionally they're good ones, but you got to be very careful with credit repair companies. And 16, which if any of the following factors related to student loans influences one credit scores? A, making payments on time or missing payments. B, having student loan accounts with no balance. C, having student loan accounts with balances. All of the above, none of the above. Student loans have no influence on credit scores, or you don't know.
I'd say D.
All of these, yes, that's true. True. Anything, whether you're making the payments on time or missing it, affects your score. The loan account with no balance or with balances, all of those affect your credit score. Anything with student loans will affect your credit score. So y'all did great. So maybe we should have done a pre-test and a post-test, but on the post-test I'll say you're all going to be excellent managers of credit. So thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on since we've done our quiz, just want to highlight again our upcoming presentations. Next week we've got saving strategies for non-savers. Next, identity theft. And we'll actually revisit our credit reports. We didn't get into this today. We're just looking at scores and reports, but how it can affect your credit and what to do with your credit report if you feel that you're a victim of identity theft. Predatory lending on November 3rd, and we'll go from there. So lots of upcoming opportunities to learn about personal finance. And for today with our credit and credit scores, any questions?
Well, hearing none. And I'll add, because I didn't say this at the beginning, so I think I'll add. Thank you, Mary.
My pleasure.
But all presentations will be on Thursdays during the afternoon, usually at 12 noon. And they're right here in South Boston at the South Boston Public Library in the meeting room. So thank you so much. And if we have no more questions, I guess that's a wrap.
All right. Thank you.